Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
That's much better. Today is Sunday, October 26, 2014. Election day in Brazil. Lots of excitements and actions happening there. And here we have elections tomorrow. Today is the fourth Sunday of the month of October. We are still following the theme of the month of October, which is the Spirit of Truth. And today we have the pleasure of having our colleague, our brother, Marcos Diclei, who's going to be talking about the mission of the Spiritists, which is our mission. I'd like to invite Teresa to do the opening reading and the prayer. And then Marcos will join us for his lecture. Thank you very much.
So I'll be reading from our daily bread, lesson 69, called Today. But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. Paul, Hebrews chapter 3, item 13. The suggestion regarding daily reciprocal encouragement, indicated by the Apostle Paul, requires a great deal of reflection so that we do not allow a little den of certain doubts to be created. Let us emphasize that Paul places singular importance to time that's called today. Point out the necessity of valuing these resources along with our activity through the day. Many believe that in order to give good advice to the brothers, it is necessary to communicate constantly, thus transforming themselves into obstinate debaters. It is important to recognize, however, that a warning constituted solely of words leaves a great emptiness after they are spoken. As occurs in the physical organizations, no spiritual edification will be constructed without foundation. But encourage one another represents a more important appeal than simply calling the one involved to verbal debates. Invitations and advice have more effectiveness when they are accompanied by the example of each one of us. All of those who live practicing the noble principles of which they devoted themselves in the world, who carefully fulfill the assumed duties and display goodness with sincerity, are leading the brothers and sisters in humanity on the uplifting path. It is for this kind of daily testimony that the converted of Damascus invited us. Only through constant practice of inner reform will man free himself from fatal deceit. Do not become hardened in the pathway that the Lord has led us to track in favor of our redemption, involvement, and sanctification. Remember the importance of time that's called today. So I just want to invite all of us now to close our eyes and to connect with the good spirits that are here and connected to God. Dear God, I would like to thank you for the opportunity for all of us, incarnated and discarnated, to be here today so we can learn a little bit more from your laws of love and charity. I ask to the good mentors of the TSS to be with our brother Marcos Diclei and help him to teach us a little bit more of your lessons. So be it.
Good morning, bom dia, ni hao. That was all my Chinese, by the way. It's great to be here and talk about such an important topic. And thank you, Teresa, for the message, the initial message, because it touches exactly on what we are going to discuss today. And today is the best day ever, because we cannot do anything about yesterday, right? It's gone. Tomorrow is not here yet. But today we can start and change the tomorrow and create the tomorrow and shape the tomorrow. So today we are all here choosing to put our time into our spiritual enlightenment, and that's what we do here at the Toronto Spirit Society every day. So welcome to all of you who are coming for the first time, those who are also watching us through the internet. Thank you, Livia, for helping. If you have any questions or comments at the internet, Jonathan, thank you for watching us again. You can make any comments or questions, and Livia will certainly bring that to us. We are here to talk about the mission of the Spiritists, the mission of those who follow or are adepts of Spiritism. And if we think about our jobs, the corporate world, the companies, they all talk about their vision, right? What they want to accomplish in the next 3-5 years. They talk about their mission. What is that company is there for? What's their objective? It's not only companies, human beings. We as human beings, we are all the time asking ourselves what we are here for, what I was created for, or at least in some point in life we started to asking that question, right? Why am I here? Why do I have all the benefits that I have in my life, my health, my family, my job, and many others don't? Is that just for my pleasure? There has to be a reason for it. So that's something that Spiritism always helps us to understand. But we should always ask as well, why the Spiritism? What's the mission of Spiritism? And how about us as Spiritists, as we call us? What's our mission? What we are here for? What's the difference between a Spiritist and a Christian and a Protestant and a Buddhist and everybody else? Right? Why do we have those variances? Is Spiritism here to destroy all the other religions? Is that why we are here? Are Spiritists here to convince everyone else to become a Spiritist? Is this really our mission as Spiritists? To preach to everybody and tell them to become a Spiritist, otherwise they are not saved. Is that it? Actually, this is what we are going to discuss today. That's our topic, because it's very important. We understand. I mentioned adepts of Spiritism, and many may have heard already the term new revelation, right? Adepts of the new revelation. Many books talks about it. And for us to understand, we need to think about how do we learn as human beings, right? We learn at baby steps. Think about our children. There's no way they can understand something complex equations if they cannot even read, right? Or even talk. So it's step by step. They cannot be an athlete if they don't know even how to stand up and walk. So throughout the history, if you look at the technology that we have today, was it always like that? No. It was one time when we didn't have any comfort in technology whatsoever. We were living among the animals in caves. And then gradually science evolved. So at the same time science evolved, our morals also evolve. If we think about the religions of the past, we would kill animals to please God. Maybe even kill people to please God. We thought that that's how we would make God to be on our side. And thankfully, today we don't need it. There's no one prepared for that today. None of you are prepared for that today, so no need to worry. But that's how we evolve. The same way, God always teaches according to our knowledge, to our level of evolution. And when we talk about revelations, some of us may have heard already that we have received the first great revelation about the law of God with Moses, right? When he brought to us the 10 Commandments, bringing the understanding of a single God, bringing the understanding that we should praise God, that we should respect people, introducing moral to a very rude society at that time. There was a very rude God as well. It was a God almost like a man, a God that would have anger, a God that would punish, a God that would not have the forgiveness. It was useful for us at that time, considering our level of understanding. But it was at a time that we were ready for more understandings, for more knowledge. And our hearts were a little bit more open, and we were tired of suffering. And there came the moral Son of humanity, and he incarnated among us, bringing us the second revelation, which was Jesus Christ, the governor of our planet, since its construction, since previous of its constructions. And he brought us a new light over the same God, a God that was not a God full of revengeance and anger and punishment, a God of love, a God that would be able to forgive. It was a big jump for our understandings, right? Jesus actually inverted our notions of leadership, our notions of God. If some of us remember, the Israelites, they were expecting a Messiah to come. As the prophets of Old Testament said, a Messiah would come and transform the world, right? And we were expecting a powerful, almighty king who would annihilate all the evildoers from the face of earth. And then the Messiah, Jesus, came. But he was not that powerful king that would do justice at all costs. He came as a humble slave of all of us. He came to serve. He came to teach us by example on what love is all about, what God is all about. And we could not understand, right? How come from our powerful social positions we would be equal as a slave that cleans the floor? And many of us could not understand and accept because of a pride in our hearts. And Jesus was crucified and came back to the spiritual realm and continues to be the governor of our planet. But he said that he would send us a new consoler, that he would teach us things that we could not understand at that time. If you remember, he spoke to us through his parables, through stories about agriculture, about the business at that time, about the taxes at that time, things that we could understand, that could relate to us, to the simple and to the powerful, if they would be willing to accept. But he said, even after I'm gone, I will send you a new consoler, a new light, a new messenger or messengers that would remind you of everything that I have said, because he knew we would forget, right? And that's actually the third revelation. The third revelation. So almost 1800 years after, we've received the Spiritism, right? As the third revelation, as that promised consoler. And he said, but the consoler, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you everything that I have said. Holy Spirit. We could say good spirit. And that's how it is. We open the scriptures, and I understand in one way, Vera understand another way, Joe understand in another way. But we have to step up and be careful with the translations, with the change that we have through our history. And we should extract the spirit, the message out of the scriptures. So we could understand that Holy Spirit as the good spirits who are among us always, who brought us the Spiritism, the third revelation. Now some people said already, or told me already, even Spiritists, that I don't think Spiritism is the third revelation. Well, we actually asked Emmanuel through a book, obviously. We are not able to talk to him because he passed away. Emmanuel is the Spiritist guide of Chico Xavier, really one of the greatest mediums that we ever knew in the face of earth. And Emmanuel was his guide, and he had over 400 books, psychographic, right, received through his mediumship. And the question was exactly this, on the book called The Consoler. Interesting enough, right? The book is called The Consoler. Question 352, shall we consider the Spiritism that consoler promised by Jesus, or the revived Christianity? in the Spirit's answer, Emmanuel answer. Spiritism is, and he used the word comforter, is the comforter promised by Jesus, who by the voice of the redeemed beings, by the spirits, spread the divine lights throughout the earth, restoring the truth and lifting the veil that covers the teachings in their role as the revived Christianity, so that men awaken to the grand era of spiritual understanding with Christ. So Spiritism is that revived Christianity. Because we may remember from history that from the year and up to the year 300 we still hundreds, or even up to 300, we have the pure Christianism that Jesus brought to us. The simple message, the simple language that appealed to our hearts, that gave hope to those persecuted. It gave hope to those humiliated by society. It gave hope to those excluded from society. It gave us hope, saying that the least shall be the greatest. So that period was the period where the Christians would reunite themselves, in places where were hidden because they were persecuted. From that time on, from the year 300 up to nowadays, really, there were a lot of changes, a lot of words that were incorporated into what Jesus said or what Jesus did. That's why there's so many confusion. So this third revelation came to remind us of that pure Christianism, that pure language that Jesus brought to us. That's why it says the revived Christianity, right? Now, does it mean that Spiritism really came to eliminate the other religions, or the Spiritists came to convert everyone else? So let's see what Emmanuel says about it, right? So what is the mission of the Spiritism, of the mission of Spiritism? Has the Spiritism came into the world to replace all the other religions? You may want to think about it. The comforter, like Jesus, must also affirm. And if you remember the Gospel according to the Spiritism, at the very first chapter, when we remind about Jesus referring to the prophets, right, and the Old Testament, he came and said, I didn't come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. So the Consoler wouldn't do anything different. The Spiritism is not here to destroy, to eliminate, to erase any other religions, but to explain what is still hidden by veils, by figures of language, or things that has been changed by us, the human beings, right? So it didn't come to destroy anyone, to destroy any religion, but to embrace all the religions, because at the end of the day, we have a single God. Jesus is the same. And even the other figures from other religions that are non-Christian at all, they are all working for the same God. They are all working for the evolution of the same planet. We are part of the same human family. So it's very sad that we today, or from centuries, we still fight against each other for no reason other than our own pride. We always want to be right and prove that the others are wrong. By doing that, we are starting the wrong way already. So Spiritism didn't come to replace the other faiths, right? But to explain, to clarify, to help us to understand. The mission of the Comforter shall be fulfilled with the souls and not with material triumph. We're not looking for material benefits, but it's spiritual benefits. Because everything that we acquire from material, from matter, is temporary. When we passed away, we are not carrying anything with us other than the knowledge that we acquired, the wisdom that we may have acquired, and the moral principles that we have acquired. No one can steal that from us. That's the only thing. So Spiritism is here to help us to improve ourselves, to return to our home, to the spiritual plane, better than when we here arrived. Now, when we learn something great, we always wanted to share with people, right? When we learn something really cool and interesting and transform ourselves and really did a great impact on us, we want to share with people. If we're not selfish, of course. Sometimes I find some chocolates at the cupboard at home, and I say, oh, I want to share with everybody. No, I'm going to eat by myself. And then Livia comes and I'll hide from her. But most of the time, when we see something great, we want to share with people. I learned something, and that happens with us when we learn about Spiritism. I learned about this great philosophy with this great religion, this great science. We all remember that Spiritism, the Spiritist doctrine has a triple aspect, right? Scientific, philosophical, and religious. Scientific that help us to understand, extract the proofs of the spiritual world, the existence of the spirits. The philosophy that help us to understand why we are here. What happens with us when we passed away, right? And all the answers that we have a hard time finding. But if we stop there, it's empty. We were reading a message from Paul of Tarsus at the beginning, right? And Paul said, even if I know everything, if I speak everything, if I don't have love, if I don't have charity, if I don't improve myself, my heart, it's all empty. It's the same thing with Spiritism. The religion is the most valuable part. Not the religion that we have to be on our knees, to worship images, to lit candle. No, but the religion that connects us to God. That's the core part. That's how we transform ourselves. So when we learn about Spiritism, we wanted everyone to be a Spiritist, to learn about it, because it helps us to understand why do we suffer. Why my family is like that. And we always point outward to others. It's my husband, it's my wife, or my kids. Spiritism actually help us to understand that start with me, with us, right? Bringing us to spiritual enlightenment. And when we transform ourselves, naturally we transform others. So initially we didn't have that understanding. So we want everybody to be a Spiritist because we thought they all need the Spiritism. My wife needs the Spiritism. My mother-in-law, oh gosh, she needs the Spiritism, right? So it took a while. They eventually became Spiritists. But not because I said so. Because they felt the need. Because they got in contact with it. Because they thought about it and incorporated. So we want to do that. And sometimes also when we learn about Spiritism, we want the big guys to learn about Spiritism. All the corruption in the world, I have to sit with Mr. President and talk to him about Spiritism. Maybe he will change his mindset and become a good person. Or that politician. Or my boss. Oh, you know what? I gotta have a talk with my boss. Maybe my next one-on-one, I will sit with him and open the gospel according to Spiritism. I'll talk to him and try to convert him to Spiritism. It's not how it works. That's not really our mission as a Spiritist, to push Spiritism to everyone else. That's not really the case. But are we wrong in trying to do that? And Emmanuel, again, the book De Consoler, right? There's a question over there. In promoting their faith, is it just that Spiritists or the mediums are anxious to convert to Spiritist principles men of prominent positions in the world? Because if we have the scientists, if we have the politicians, if we have the teachers, if we have everyone that has power on earth, we can transform earth. Because Spiritism is so good. Spiritism is actually the same thing as calling Christianity. It's the same thing that Jesus brought to us. That's why it's the revived Christianism. So imagine if everybody can be a Christian, right? Can I go and talk to the powerful man and maybe change their minds? That would be an easy and quick way to transform the world. And we all want to transform the world. We want to do great things in life. We rarely think that we are here just to improve ourselves. We think that we want to transform the world, right? Like a Gandhi, a Mother Teresa. Right? And the answer from Emmanuel about our anxiousness. He says, Christian Spiritists, you see how Spiritism and Christians are very related. He uses that word Christian Spiritists because there are many other religions that call themselves Spiritism. It's quite different. So he calls Christian Spiritism because there is no Spiritism without Jesus. Even if There are Spiritist groups that want to say, we got to separate. We don't want to talk about Jesus here. Then, my dear friend, you are not talking about Spiritism. You may be talking about spiritualism. You may believe that there are spirits, there is life after death, but there's no Spiritism there. So back to Emmanuel, Christian Spiritists should think long about enlightening themselves before any anxious desire to convert others. That's the end of the lecture. It's the mission of the Spiritists. We should think about enlightening themselves before any anxious desire of converting others. And Emmanuel actually uses the word like itching. Sometimes we are itching to convert people, to transform them. No, we are not here to transform others. We are here to transform ourselves. Oh, but they are so difficult. Well, see how difficult it is to transform ourselves. And you can assess how small are our chances to transform someone else. Because we can control ourselves, we cannot control the others. So if we have such a hard time changing ourselves, imagine others. Forget about it. The only way is actually by doing it, by giving the example. And when I mention about my wife and my mother-in-law, they became Spiritists. But it was not by the words, right? It was actually by seeing other people, how they behave, what they used to do, and gradually they become interested. Right? So that if you want to help people, we should start with ourselves. If we want to help our family, we should start with ourselves. So in summary here, when we learn something great and then we want to help others, sometimes we are desperate to share and help because we learn that that's the right thing to do. That's what we learn with the Spiritism, that we want to be charitable, that we want to be good, that we want to transform ourselves and help the others around us. But sometimes it's because of pride, because we want to do something good. We want to change the world, and we expect transformations from one day to another. We expect to change everybody else and have everybody else agreeing with us. And we don't want to go there. Don't want to be that person that goes to a party and say, you know what? I heard about Spiritism, so come here, I'll talk to you about Spiritism. And you start doing that with the Catholics, with the Buddhists. It's not going to help. That's really not the way to go. That's not the way to go. And in many cases, if we don't give enough time and thinking, we don't know why we are doing it. Right? Sometimes, and that's why with Divaldo Franco, also a Spiritist medium, we discussed recently a message from him, that sometimes we are doing charity, we are preaching something without knowing why we are doing it. So first, we have to absorb, to incorporate, to understand, to live, and then we know why we are doing it. There are many Spiritist mediums over there interested on the phenomena, in receiving messages from the spirits and receiving psychographic messages, but they really don't know why they are doing that. What's the importance? What's the objective? That's number one. That's first. That's first things for us. So we have an invitation again from the Gospel according to Spiritism, the Spirit of Truth, and he says, Spiritists, love one another. This is the first teaching of Spiritism. Second, educate yourselves. We should invert things. We should say, oh, I know everything about Spiritism, but I criticize, I am rude with people, I have no patience if they didn't study. Don't come talk to me if you didn't study the books. So I know everything. And son, you just read a book from Irmão Jacó, right? What's the name of the book again? Voltaire, Return, yeah. So he was a president of the Spiritist Federation. He knew every single comma of those books. He went to the spiritual realm. They said, I'm sorry to tell you, but you have to go back now and do everything that you learned. So that's why, the Spirit of Truth tells us, love one another first and educate yourselves. Because the only way for us to know why we do things and how we do things is learning it. That's why it's so important. That's why Spiritism invites us so much to participate on the courses and the classes that we have, study the books. And if we pick the books, they all point us to the gospel of Jesus, to the Old Testament, because we are all in sync, we are all connected. One of the things that we always think is on Spiritism is we want to jump ahead, right? We want to help, we want to do charity, but we don't know how, right? And I have a book here that I encourage everyone. Obviously, if you want to learn about Spiritism, we encourage everyone to take the Spirits book, right? As the first book. More than 1,000 questions about life. Everything about life. But if you read it already, this book is a novel, Paul and Stephen, about Paul of Tarsus, a brilliant book. And to understand the mission of Spiritists, we have to understand a little bit about Paul of Tarsus. Because Christianity as we know today is greatly thanks to Paul. Some people may criticize and not understand. But if we think about his time, the principles of Jesus were very contained at the beginning to the Jewish community who were converted into Jesus' principles. So they were very limited. And Paul was actually thinking, what is going to happen with the principles of Jesus 50 years from now, when Peter passed away, when he passes away? Because everybody, through persecution, they were going back to the Jewish traditions again. The greatest church that was active at that time was the Church of Jerusalem. And Paul was talking to one of his followers, Barnabas, exactly about this. And he said, well, the Church of Jerusalem is so busy right now because of the aid to the sick and to the poor that we offer. Isn't that the same with us in life? We only go to the churches when we are sick, when we lose a job, when something bad happened, and we remember about God and we become desperate and then we go there. So that was the scenario of that Church of Jerusalem at that time, right? It was crowded, packed. Peter could do anything else other than take care of that church. And Paul wants to do more. He wants to do something for the future because he saw the gospel of Jesus threatened by that isolation. So something that I want to read for you here is actually his project. He had a project, but here's his thinking. Here's what he says to Barnabas. Currently, we are able to care for the sick, to offer beds in response of repose to unfortunates, for the homeless, but there always were and always will be sick and tired bodies on earth. In the Christian task, endeavor, such efforts cannot be forgotten. It is important to help others, to help the sick, to help the homeless. Yes, it is. But the illumination of the Spirit must take precedent. Spiritual enlightenment comes first. Because if we heal the body today, the spirit is still sick. What is going to happen? The body will become sick again. Because all the sicknesses that we have today in our bodies only are there because we, as immortal spirits, our souls, we are sick. Have you ever heard on the gospel passages where Jesus said, I can't preach today because I have a headache, my leg hurts, or he probably have lots of challenges from his trips. It hurt indeed, but he didn't have sicknesses because he didn't have any disease and sicknesses and imperfections in his spirit, right? So helping those poor and sick and in need is important, yes, but his spiritual enlightenment is number one. If people had Christ in their hearts, the picture of their needs would be completely different. If we understand Jesus, what's in our needs would transform. The understanding of the gospel and the examples of Jesus would revamp perspectives on pain and suffering. We would understand why we suffer. We would understand why we are in pain. The needy would find resources through their own efforts. If we need something, instead of being there locked in self-pity and complaints, in a victim attitude, we would go after and have faith and courage and humility to ask for help, to ask for a job, to be proactive, right? The sick would feel in long illnesses an outlet for their imperfections. We would understand that our sicknesses, the diseases, are actually an indication that we have something to expiate, something to learn. Right? Nobody would be a beggar, a homeless, because they would all have Christian light for mutual help. And finally, life's obstacles would be cherished as the sacred corrections of a loving father for his troubled children. There is no God who is after us for revenge. If we are going through suffering, there is a cause, there is a reason, which is not in my wife, which is not on the husband, on your kids, on your mother-in-laws and father-in-law. It's on us. We've done something for it. That's why Paul says we have to bring the light of the gospel, the spiritual enlightenment. Otherwise, we are not solving the root cause of the problem. And Paul's project was actually face the criticism of all the many of the Christians at that time, to preach the gospel to the Gentiles, to those non-Jewish, to those who probably never heard about the Jewish principles, the single idea of God, and even more, the teachings of Jesus. So he was the one carrying the flag, not only helping in terms of charity, but bringing the light of the gospel, the third revelation, the law of God to people. Because when we learn, when we become educated, it helps us to understand, how to cope with the challenges, help us to understand how to act. So it was a key mission for Paul to spread Christianity all over the world. And one of the challenges that his disciples or friends were talking to him is, Paul, I have a few savings over here, but we don't have enough money to travel the world. What we are going to do? We can go to the different churches that were at the time and ask them for money. They are overloaded, helping the poor, helping the sick. How can we go there and ask them for money for you to travel and preach the gospel? He said, not to worry. I can build tents, I can make carpets. So we go from city to city, we will rent tools, and we'll set up a mobile shop. Wherever we go, we start working, and we earn the money to buy the food and what we need. And his friend, yeah, I appreciate your attitude, but what if they don't use tents in that city? Or what if they don't buy your carpets? Well, if they don't buy tents and carpets, I can do sandals. We will do whatever it takes. And that brings us a good example, right? I'm making really an analogy here because that's the right analogy with the Mission of Spiritists. We not only need to improve ourselves as a spiritual enlightenment in the first place, and help people along the way when they need around us, our brothers and sisters. In reality, they are our brothers and sisters. But we also need to carry the lessons and the knowledge of Spiritism to others. I'm going to read a few passages over here, if time permits, from Erasto, who was actually a disciple of Paul in different books of the Gospel. Erasto is mentioned over there. He was a disciple of Paul. And Erasto, in one of the messages in chapter 17, I think 4, the Gospel according to Spiritism, he also, in numerous times, he repeats, go and preach, go and preach, go and preach. The chapter entitled The Mission of Spiritists. Go and preach, go and preach. And sometimes we think, oh, I need to probably do 1,000 lectures. I need to travel around and do and talk a lot. But, the best way for preaching is actually by doing it. The example. And that's how we take a word, and sometimes we interpret the word differently. Right? These spirits, they can do much because they are discarnate. They are not present and tangible to us. So they need people to talk about the third revelation, about the gospel of Jesus. They need people like us, men and women that has jobs and problems in life, and they don't have perfection just yet. They have their virtues, still their vices, their challenges. People like all of us here, they need us. That's the mission of the Spiritists. It's really to preach by example, which is very challenging. And Paul knew that, right? And that's why he did. He preached by example, but he traveled spreading the word as well, exactly as we do here on the Spiritist centers, to share that with people, to invite everyone to reach their own conclusions by their thinking. It's rational faith, not a blind faith. We don't impose, we share, we invite. So, an interesting thing from this passage and this dialogue from Paul is that in many times we think that we are incapable or unable to do it. We put so many obstacles, right? And that's the core of the message. In Emmanuel, actually, he says, there are 3 little letters. There is one word with 3 letters that defines our attitude. And the word is but. B-U-T. And he says, depending on how we position this word, we are being proactive and faithful, or we are being lazy and stepping back and sticking to our condition right now. And sometimes we think about practicing the teachings of the gospel, which is very difficult for us. So we say, oh, I have so many challenges and imperfections. How can I ever go and deliver a lecture with so many imperfections? Well, I have a lot of vices and imperfections, but I will prepare myself and I will do whatever I can, and I know that Jesus and the good spirits will help me. See how you take a struggle with the word but and had faith in a positive approach, even at our work, in our daily lives, right? Oh my gosh, there's so much work to do in that area. I haven't never done that before, but I'll talk to someone, I'll go after information, I'll ask for help, and I'm gonna do it. Isn't that positive? Overcoming. And then we have the other challenges, right? Oh, the gospel is so beautiful with so much encouraging words that Jesus brought to us, but it's so difficult. Oh, but it's too much work. I love going to the TSS on Sunday mornings, but it's difficult to go during the winter. Oh, I appreciate the courses during the weekdays, but I have kids' activities and all that stuff, so I can't make it. So it's an interesting test for us as invited by Emmanuel. Where do we put our attitude? And it all starts with our thinking, with our words, right? Just wanted to share that with you. So our attitude in face of Spiritism, it is really not only to incorporate, but to share. The best way for us to share is by example. If we love something, and we want to share with others, because that something helped us in some way, the best way for us to be able to help others in the same way is the example. That's the main thing for us. That's the main thing. So, love this book and encourage everyone to read it. We have it here in our library for sale also. So we discussed about spiritual enlightenment being the first place. We discussed about the missions of Paul and these 3 little words. It's a thermometer for us to measure our attitude, right? But we still, even if we all do, most of us ended up failing, right? There's another book called The Messengers that states that we are all prepared to reincarnate and being like living letters of Christ by living the gospel in our actions, to spread the word by living it, right? But most of us, we failed. So how do we know if we are actually on the right track or not? Do we need to be perfect to be called Christians? Do we need to be right every single time? Do we need to be perfect to be called Spiritist? That's actually not the case, right? That's actually not the case. And we love statistics, right? In times of big data, all that stuff, Well, maybe I know if I'm on the right track by the number of books I read, by the number of lectures I watch it, or maybe the number of lectures that we gave, right? And we could come up with thousands and thousands of measures. But that's not really the case. We are actually asking Erasto for help, right? To give us that thermometer, to give us that analytics tool to understand if we are on the right path. Many people say path to salvation, right? It's not only about accepting Jesus and say we are saved, or say, or carry a little, I don't have my bag here, but I have a bag called I am a Spiritist. It's not only put the bag and say I'm a Spiritist, so therefore I'm saved. What is being saved? Is really leave the ruins of the old man behind and building a new man and new woman, right? To renew ourselves, to transform ourselves. That's the concept of salvation. It's really construct and drive us toward the perfection that we will achieve one day, which is closer to Jesus Christ. So Erasto says, we will recognize if we are on the right track by the principles of true charity. The principles of true charity that we demonstrate when we talk to someone from a different religion and embrace them as brothers and sisters, even if we think differently. By the principle of true charity that we embrace someone who has no religion whatsoever. By the true charity that we embrace someone who is rude to us, someone who is not polite, someone to whom we do a favor and they not even say thank you. And instead of, come on, that person, I landed the book, it's not even a thank you. Instead of criticizing, that we transform our mental attitude and pray for that person, that he learned gratitude. Or maybe that we observe, why I'm so mad because I didn't get a thank you. It's because of my pride? That I'm doing such a great act in lending a book and I don't deserve a thank you? That's unacceptable. That's our thermometer of self-enlightenment, right? That may be a sign of pride. So how do we recognize if we are on the right track? By the attitude. How do we demonstrate the principles of charity? And charity is not only giving the money. The most difficult charity is the moral charity, because we put ourselves aside to serve. Right? That's the most difficult one. For the love we demonstrate to our neighbors, for their selflessness and the triumph of the principles. How do we treat each other in good times and also in bad times? Right? How are we with our wives and husbands at home? Do we always want to be right? The final word always has to be mine. Someone has to say, okay, that's fine, and break that cycle. Let's be us. Right? Let's be ourselves. How do we accept differences? How do we behave when our wishes don't come true? Right? We always pray, and it doesn't happen. Why? Well, maybe it's because we are not ready for it. Maybe that's not because that's the best thing we need at the moment. Maybe we need something else. We recognize if we are on the right path by the reaction that we have when we are criticized, or our postures when someone makes a mistake. Do we crucify them, or we help them, we coach them, we kindly coach them to do better, right? So those are day-to-day things that we can do to spread the gospel through our example. That's the message for Jesus. It's not to form speakers to share the word. Is that important? Yes, it is. Although we are all mediums over here, most of us don't have the mediumship of seeing the spirits and listening to spirits. Therefore, we need incarnate people that can talk about Jesus in words sometime, right? Have you ever noticed that sometimes we are working on the street and came someone out of the blue and came to us and start complaining and telling their problems? I even don't know that person. They start sharing their life. We can have an attitude to say, I don't even know you. And we leave. Or we can have an attitude to say, God help that person. Will you pray for that person? You put yourself in service for that person. And you don't need to let people know that you were praying, or they may think that you were crazy. But in your mind, quiet in your mind, you can listen and pray at the same time. You can serve, right? That's charity. So reminding Erasto, my friend, and I'm not going even to the chapter that I said I would read. I'm not going to read it, but I invite you to read chapter 20, I think, 4 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. It's an amazing treat. But the message for us as Spiritists, right, is to think about the children. Do not wait for an invitation to come and teach these children. Do not wait for an invitation to teach moral principles to your children at home. And they need that desperately. Right? The schools will teach your brains, but no one is taking care of their hearts. So be proactive and just do it, right? Give them the best example that we can. Even if we fail, try every day, try hard every day. And give our kids the example. And read good stories for them. Enough of shooting, right? And crime stories. Why don't we talk to them about good stories that can give them confidence to be good out there? Because many kids, they are bullied when they try to do the right thing, when they try to be kind. The boys, when they try to do the right thing and be kind, they are not accepted. So who will give them enough confidence other than the parents? So don't wait for an invitation, just do it. If you don't know how to do it, ask for help. That's why the churches, the Spiritist centers are around, right? The gospel at home. If you don't have the habit for reading, independent of your religion, it's an amazing source of strength and knowledge for us. The gospel of Jesus. The gospel that I just told you over here is the same gospel of Jesus, just explained, with the parables explained. So don't wait for an invitation to start learning. Just borrow a book, buy a book, go to the internet, download a free PDF. Start the gospel at home in your home. And if your kids don't want to follow you, if your husband or wife don't want to join you, do it alone. Because we are never alone. Your guardian angel is there, or your spirit protector is there. Do it yourself. I had a friend that her husband was from another religion. He didn't accept her to have the gospel home. She would go to the bathroom, lock it herself, and do it. Why can't we do it? Right? So don't wait for an invitation. Don't wait for the lotto of 649 to decide to help people. Sometimes we all have an opportunity to give a little donation for someone who is asking, to buy something for someone who is in need. Someone is sick. You don't need money actually to make a phone call. Someone disappeared for a couple of days. What's going on with that person? Just make a phone call, send an email, ping him or her on Facebook, and maybe pay a visit, cook a meal. We all can do it. So it's a little example of kindness and charity. We all can do it. All those things transcend religion, transcend any labels. But that's the message from Jesus for us. That's the message from the Spiritism for us. Always be at service. That's the really message for us. As Paul used to say, he was always at service at any time, even with his imperfections. And I would close with a little passage from Matthew chapter 20. And Jesus actually told that the Son of Man, which means really himself, Jesus, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. So if Jesus, the most evolved, the pure spirit that governs our planet, came here to serve, how about us? Are we here to be served? That's an invitation for all of us. What should we expect? And we all can, little by little, do something. That's the invitation of Spiritism for all of us. That's our mission as Spiritists. And I also can say that's our mission as Christians. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Oh,
I forgot.
you forgot.
I was worried with the time.
Thank you so much, Marcos. That was always so well done. We also have time for questions, comments.
Any comments or questions
so
from the internet?
Shy.
No?
Let me kind of just put my personal reflection on the beautiful word that Marcos gave us today. I was speaking with Sandra the other day, and I say, why do we go to the TSS on Sundays? Why be here? It's not like other religions where it's mandatory, otherwise we will be punished for it. We don't come here for rituals, or to sing, or to be happy, or to be joyous. We could be doing that, but that's not why we come. So why do we come? I'm sure everyone will have different answers in their heart, but for me, it's three things. One, to be educated. No matter how much we've read all the books, every time somebody else comes here and puts their point of view, we look at it from a different view that we might not have thought about. Points that come up, and that helps us educate ourselves. Very often I come here to be inspired by examples that other people in the past in our history have given us. But I think that to me the answer that I guess is strongest for me, I come here every Sunday to be with other Spiritists. It's very difficult to live the Spiritist life. So simple are the lessons, but so hard is the practice. So I think it's very important for us to, as part of living the Spiritist life, to be among other Spiritists, to exchange our experiences, our hardships, our challenges, our trials, and think how we can learn from each other how to be the example that we need to be for others. We don't need to preach much more than being a good example, but are we really ready to be that good example? So the mission is clear. The practice, as usual, it will take us many other lives to complete. Thank you very much, Marcos.
Thank you. But we all can do a little. And this morning, Livia was talking to us about the widow's mite, right? The little contribution for the widow at the church, and she gave the little 2 coins, and everybody else was looking at her at the church, right? What a shame! Someone came here to the church, and we are all giving, dozens, hundreds of dollars, and here comes this widow with 2 little coins. What a shame! That was the disciples talking to Jesus about it. Jesus turned to them and said, well, I tell you that this little widow, she gave more than everybody else. Well, what do you mean? She gave 2 cents and they gave hundreds of dollars. Actually, the 2 cents was everything she had. They have millions of dollars in the bank, so hundreds of dollars for them is nothing. They are giving away their excess. There's more excess. But the widow, she gave everything she had. So for doing good, for serving, for giving the example, it doesn't matter that we are only giving 2 coins. The important is that we give. So let's never use that as an excuse. Actually, one of the greatest dangers of Spiritism is, I understand what you said, but we cannot say, I'll leave it for my next incarnation. That may be too late. Better give 2 cents today than wait for the hundreds of dollars. They may not come that soon.
Because today you have the 2 cents.
Yes.
You do not know if in your next incarnation,
Yeah.
if you're even going to have 2 cents that you have today.
Yes.
So, the thing about letting it for the next incarnation is that in this incarnation, I'm surrounded by the people that I am. I have my health, I have
you. So
Have to speak much louder or come up to the front. That is.
Yeah, sometimes we know when it's giving to us great tools right now to work, and I don't use them the way that I should. Most likely on the next one, those tools are going to be taken away, so I won't have them to help. So let's use them right now. So the next one, instead of having them being taken away, we have other tools added, so we can do even more. Right?
yes. So as we started the meeting today, talk about a lesson related to today. Let's do something, all of us, today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. We're now going to prepare for our Pasi. For those who may be here for the first time, the Pasi is just a transferring of positive energy from the divine to each one of us. We're going to bring down the lights, going to put some beautiful music in the background. We're just going to allow you to relax and concentrate and just open yourself for all of the love and beauty that we can receive. Now get the children back in.